Hello, everybody. This is the Max group for March 6th, 2024. My name's Isa or Isadora. I'm one of the therapists here at Cache Valley Counseling, and it's not going to be a really long one today, but we're just going to talk briefly about some mindfulness exercises and just what mindfulness is and why it can be helpful um, for you, whether that's in the process of therapy or just, in general in life and what it does for you, right? So I'm going off of this textbook called A Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Workbook. It is by Dr. Bob Stahl and Elisha Goldstein. And it just kind of goes through, what different kinds of ways to use mindfulness, what it's for, what some benefits are, and how it can just, be helpful to you. And so mindfulness, to begin with, is a very interesting thing because I used to think that mindfulness basically a different word for meditation. And it can be used synonymously with meditation. And meditation was something that I didn't really know how, or understand how to do well for a really long time because I don't know, I guess growing up or whenever I heard about meditation, it just kind of what I imagined was, a person sitting in kind of a cross-legged position on the ground, holding their hands out and like, kind of humming or to themselves. Um, and that the whole goal or purpose was to kind of clear your mind and not think about anything. And maybe there was some element of it about connecting to the universe or nature or something like that. Um, but in general, I thought the general goal of meditation was to just clear your mind and not be thinking about anything, right? And that was something I found very, very challenging, and something that didn't make sense to me. I was like, how do you think about nothing? I don't get that. Like my, mind races a lot. I have a little bit of ADHD. And so for me, especially like I think a lot, you know, the idea of not thinking about anything, unless I was sleeping essentially was just like, how does one even do that? And why would we try? Um, and as I've, worked as a therapist and learned and trained, I've, come to realize that mindfulness is not just about clearing your mind, right? It's not necessarily just about not thinking about anything in order to avoid, stress or things like that. It's much more about, and it does help with stress, certainly, but it's much more about how to connect with yourself and your body and the world around you in ways that can be helpful and beneficial. Sorry, I'm also just trying to turn to the page here that talks about what mindfulness is, right? Um, and it's not about thinking about nothing. It's actually about thinking about and being aware of what is happening around you. And so it's kind of what we're intentionally doing is removing your mind from necessarily stress and concerns and things that are preoccupying your thoughts, like anxiety and just things that you're concerned about. And we want to bring attention to your body, your surroundings, where you are. And it's again, not about clearing your mind and thinking about nothing, but it's really much more about how do I be in the moment? How do can I be present? How can I pay attention to my immediate surroundings and my five senses in ways that are calming and soothing and healing, right? So this book talks about mindfulness, saying that mindfulness is about mindfulness is about being fully aware of whatever is happening in the present moment and can be brought into any situation, right? So anywhere we are, we can be mindful. We can utilize mindfulness. It doesn't have to be in, you don't have to be alone, isolated necessarily. You don't have to be in a quiet place. You don't have to be, you know, um, it doesn't have to be something that's super special or specific. It's something you can do at any time, right? And it's consists of cultivating awareness of the mind and the body and living in the here and now. It's typically practiced historically in a lot of ancient traditions or religions, like Buddhist meditative disciplines, but also, some Christianity, Judaism, Taoism, Hinduism, Islam, indigenous uh, what's the word? Indigenous beliefs and traditions as well. So that, all sorts of different spiritual groups and traditions have used mindfulness. And today, when we think about it in terms of mental health, um, it's involves psychology and mental and emotional well-being, right? And so it's basically this idea that we are training ourselves to be in the moment in order to deal with stress, pain, or even illness. Um, and it's becoming a much more common thing to do. And it's helpful because especially when we're experiencing a lot of anxiety and distress and getting escalated, it can be a really helpful coping mechanism in order to soothe and counteract some of those um, symptoms we may experience when we are in distress, essentially, right? And so often when we're feeling anxious or just really intense emotions in therapy, that's something that we call being flooded, where you're flooded with emotion. And when this happens, it's not only an emotional experience, but it's also a biological experience and a hormonal experience where um, it's like this idea that let's say your nervous system goes into fight or flight mode or freeze, because you feel threatened or you feel scared or something's going on. And your blood starts pumping and your heart races, your pulse quickens. Um, the cortisol levels, which is, the main hormone for stress, rises in your body. And even though those things like the heartbeat and the blood racing and the all this, and the cortisol, those are things that are excuse me, that our body naturally does in order to protect us from danger. Like when we are in danger, if we are in physical danger or anything like that, those things happen in order to help us survive and like run away from a dangerous circumstance, those sorts of things. However, if we are in those um, kind of fight or flight sort of mode of that emotional flooding for long or extended periods of time, that can become dangerous to our well-being in the long run, because high cortisol levels are correlated with a lot of difficult things and issues, and just prolonged stress is not good or fun, right, for any of us. So mindfulness is a easily accessible um, and helpful way to combat that, right? It's not the only way that we can combat that, but it's a really wonderful, self-soothing kind of thing. And there's tons of different techniques, of different activities or exercises, which we're not going to go through everything, today necessarily, but I just wanted to touch on um, a few things. So first is just your basic mindful activity of any kind. Usually is going to have to do with, in some way or capacity, slowing down and noticing your surroundings. So, this is often something I've done in therapy with my clients. I, for example, if I have a client who's getting emotionally flooded or escalated in therapy, you know, even especially if they're heading towards, let's say, the feeling really anxious or having a panic attack or any kind of, emotion like that, sometimes I might stop or pause a session and say, like, okay, instead of talking about the situation, let's slow down and do some mindfulness. And so I might instruct the client to, sit back in a comfortable position, close their eyes, and then I'll slowly, over maybe like 5 to 10 minutes of time, instruct them to just think about and notice things in their body. And I might begin with, at the bottom, right? Like at their feet, and say, like, okay, notice how your feet feel in your shoes, right? With the socks you're wearing and the shoes that you're wearing, are they comfortable? Are they not? How do they feel on the floor? And, with the pressure, do they feel heavy? Maybe not. Maybe, um, and then I start moving up the body of like, okay, what about your legs? Like, how do they feel inside of those, pants that you're wearing, those jeans? Is the material rough or coarse, or is it soft? Is it comfortable? Is it, maybe a little stiff because it's more formal attire? How does it feel on your body? And then how does it feel to have, to feel the pressure of like the couch and the cushions of the couch on your body, beneath your legs or behind your back. And, and anyway, so just kind of this way, I start moving upwards on the body and focusing on each section and just kind of have them notice what they are feeling on like the fabric and the weight of the clothes they're wearing or the couch they're sitting on. all the way up to their head and back down. And I just kind of do this over maybe 5 or 10 minutes of time, depends. And this is a really great way to get that, physiological, emotional, panicky kind of feeling to soothe and calm down. When you're noticing and paying attention to things in the moment, it's really helpful for that self-soothing. Right. And I've had clients come, down from really intense anxiety to calm down and be able to feel much more relaxed and better. Not that that's solved all their problems, but it's a great way to self-soothe in the moment and just feel, better and about things, and to, not have to stay in that place of panic and anxiety as intensely for as long, right? Um, so that can be a very helpful thing. So in that case, we talk, close our eyes, we focus on the body and feeling and clothes, but we can do other things too. For example, if you're out and about, like on a walk or a drive, you can be mindful by deciding to deliberately pay attention to the things around you. Maybe driving isn't, I don't know, maybe the best way to do this because you have to focus on the road. But let's say you're walking, and you walk around, and maybe you decide, a good mindfulness exercise would be to really focus on the things that you're seeing. So maybe you say, like, okay, I'm going to focus on the trees that I'm walking by. And every time you see a tree, you're going to look at the trunk of that tree and the branches, and you're going to follow those branches and those leaves with your eyes, and you're going to notice the color, and you're going to notice the shape, and you're just going to kind of look at those things and focus and pay attention to it in a way that you normally wouldn't. And just kind of notice your surroundings and be very observant and take note of what's happening around you. This is something you can also do with food, which can be really fun. So for example, you can get specific types of food that are, either have very interesting tastes or flavors, or maybe, like, what's the word, textures as well. So one thing that I really like is, if anyone's ever had those like chocolate covered, like, raisins, or cranberry, like chocolate covered craisins, or like those dried cranberries, or different, and chocolate covered anything really works well with this. And where, maybe you start off by like picking it up and holding it in your hand and just kind of noticing the shape and the look of whatever that thing, that chocolate covered raisin is. And then as you look at it, you can, once you've seen, notice everything you can look about it visually, then you bring it closer and you smell it. And you take in that smell and you think about that for a second. And maybe you just kind of balance it in your hand, and the feel of the weight of it. What's that texture like? And once you've done that for a while, eventually, finally, you can put it in your mouth, but instead of just quickly eating it and swallowing it, you're going to really notice it and savor it. So you're going to just let it sit in your mouth and, notice that flavor, and then maybe move it around in your mouth, and the chocolate starts to melt, and you kind of notice that and how that feels. Eventually you get to the raisin, or the cranberry, or whatever it's in there, and you notice how that tastes differently, or the texture is different, and you eventually bite down on that and notice that flavor, and you do that really slowly, really methodically, and eventually you swallow it, right, and finish eating that. But that's another type of mindfulness exercise that you can do to kind of calm down and be in the moment about something. So there's, things like that, these kind of exercises that really can be anything. There's a million different things you can think of, but to just pick something that's in your immediate surroundings and pay close attention to it and interact with it in a way that is slow and methodical, and just noticing and appreciating everything about it. And that's very grounding, very soothing, and helpful. And then there's other things as well, including more cognitive forms of mindfulness. So, for example, noticing and paying attention to your thoughts, and some types, just kind of paying attention to what kind of things do you think about? What kind of thoughts do you have? Especially things like self-talk. How do you talk to yourself? Is it negative? Is it positive? When you're frustrated about something, do you kind of scold yourself in your mind, being like, oh, that, you're being so stupid? Are you critical of yourself, or are you encouraging of yourself, like, no, you can do it, it's okay? Like, do you soothe yourself actually in terms of how you speak to yourself in your mind? So that's another form of mindfulness, is just paying attention to how you speak to yourself, what you're saying in your mind, and can we choose to do that differently, right? Can we choose to speak to ourselves differently, that self-talk, and to try to bring in new types of thoughts, new types of images. There's, again, lots of mindfulness that has to do, again, with the body, things that are if there's the example I gave of just sitting there on a couch, but there's also things around like exercise and moving your body, like yoga or dance or hiking, right? Like if you were to go on a walk and just notice, how does it feel to be in my body when I'm doing this physical thing? Um, right. And then breathing is another big one. Breathing exercises is really helpful for also when you're feeling really anxious. It's just, there's a lot of different kinds. But one very common one is what we call box breathing. And so it's called box breathing because you just, um, it's, if you're imagining the four sides of a square, right? Um, that completes the breath. And so for the first side, you're going to breathe in for a count of four, let's say, right? So it's like you're going 1, 2, 3, 4 in, and then you hold that breath for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, holding, right? And then you're gonna exhale, breathe out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, exhaling out, and then hold again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So when I instruct clients to do this, I kind of count along and tell them what to do while they breathe. And so we're going 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, right? So, and that's completes the four sides. And so that's what we call box breathing. And it's again, a really good way to kind of regulate the body, bring those cortisol levels down, and just, kind of calm yourself when there's moments of anxiety or things like that happening. So anyway, there's so many amazing benefits to this sort of thing, to mindfulness, to self-awareness of the body. There's mental benefits, emotional, psychological benefits, as well as physical ones. Typically, when we experience less stress and anxiety and cortisol, that again correlates with better health outcomes in a lot of ways. Like stress leads to, and like things like poor sleep lead to a lot of potential health problems. And so if we can combat that, that's, really, really positive, really great. Also, it helps with resilience, with self-regulation, the ability to stay calm in, maybe difficult or frustrating circumstances. Anyway, there's a lot of things that can be beneficial and helpful. There's, just being aware of your emotions. Another thing that is kind of sort of not exactly mindfulness, but really helpful too, that I appreciate is any kind of being aware of your emotions. And one way that I really love to do this is through mood logs. There's a mood log that I really like, and it's an app. And it's called How We Feel. Actually, let me see if I can pull it up really quick just to show what it looks like. Um, where is it? Okay, so it's this, I don't know if you can tell on the screen, it's this bottom little black square icon with this kind of colorful heart-shaped thing in there. And if you open that up, um, basically it just it asks you to check in. And when you're checking in, it asks you what kind of emotions you're feeling. I don't know if you can see this really well on the screen, but the different options are high energy unpleasant, high energy pleasant, low energy unpleasant, and low energy pleasant. So you pick one of those, let's say it's low energy pleasant, then it's going to give me a bunch of these different options of feelings and emotions that I can, talk about. And so, for example, one just says chill. So if I click on that, then it goes and it's going to ask me like, what are you doing right now? And what are these things? And so it's going to ask you like where you are, who you're with, what are you doing, what's contributing to you feeling this emotion that you picked. And there's also other types of resources in this app of like, again, mindfulness exercises, different things like that that can help you. And what I like about these mood logs, you can also get set up the settings and notifications um, to remind you, like however many times a day you want. It could be like once a day, 3, 4 times a day, to check in with your emotions. And I love to use this for my clients because it's a way for you to be aware of how you're feeling and to have to think about how you're feeling, like to stop and be like, okay, what emotion actually matches me right now, and why, and what's happening around me that's causing me to feel this way. And when you're just more self-aware, that helps also to be mindful, to be in your body, and to just kind of pay attention to what's going on with, for you and around you, so that, that information, that awareness helps us to be more empowered to make changes and choices in our lives that's going to lead to better outcomes, right? If we're noticing that maybe we really struggle emotionally at a certain time of day or in a certain type of activity, maybe there's something we can do um, to change that, to modify things in our lives to make things better. If we can add things into our lives, into our day that's going to make us feel better, right? So yeah, anyway, there's so much that's helpful with my, in terms of mindfulness. Um, there's so many resources out there online too, that you can, just Google, and even on Netflix, like there's if you searched up mindfulness or meditation, there's multiple kind of guided meditations that you can click on and take you through. And so it's very something that's super easy, super accessible online or through different apps, different things, and great benefits to just helping soothe yourself, to good emotional regulation, good self-regulation. And there's just physiological and psychological benefits to being able to do that, and it helps to to feel good and feel better. So anyway, that's kind of it for today. Not super crazy elaborate, but hopefully that's something that can be fun or helpful to you guys, and that you can utilize on a regular basis in your life. It's again very easy, very accessible, and hopefully can be helpful. So anyway, that's it for tonight. Have a good night, and thank you so much. Until the next group.